Hi everybody, how's it going? Thanks for coming back and watching this video. When I first started learning web development, obviously I was always trying to come up with ideas of things to build and, how I could make my learning more applicable to my day-to-day life. So I'd always be looking on, I think if you're learning, you should always be on the lookout for how can technology make my life easier. And one of the things I always found was going out with friends and stuff, going out to bars or restaurants, a lot of places wouldn't include the tip amount on a bill. You'd get a bill, but then you'd have to work out how much tip you wanted to add. So I just thought, let's just build a little app that can do that for me. And at the time, I was very early on in my learning process of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But I built something. I put it all together. I hosted it on, I think it was GitHub Pages at the time. And it worked. I even used it a couple of times out and about in the wild. So in the sense of at work at the moment, we've been doing quite a lot of refactoring on old code. We've been going through the code base and tidying things up. I thought, let's go back and take a look at some of the projects that I wrote when I was a junior, or I was not even a junior, I was still learning to be a developer, and see if I can refactor those a little bit and make them a little bit better, modernize them a little bit. And in this video, I'm going to refactor a tip calculator, as I mentioned. Now, this is a project that I hadn't touched for about 3 years. So I'm just going to jump straight into the computer and start refactoring, and we'll take it from there. Here we are in the repo then. This is the code, obviously, and I've just opened up an HTTP server, which is just running the project here in the background on the local host, just so I can sort of see it and work with it. And if I enter a number, hi, great service, and the bill was 30, the tip was 4, and the total was 34, but I guess that's cut off by this window down here. So let's just chuck that into mobile mode. So there we go, 34. The only error I'm getting is uncall error, Bootstrap's JavaScript requires jQuery. So that's a Bootstrap error, I guess. So I guess when it comes to refactoring, let's break this down into 2 steps. Let's look at the HTML, look at the JavaScript, understand what it's doing, and then I think I'll refactor the JavaScript first and then refactor the HTML. So I'll just get all the stuff working logically and then refactor the actual look of the app. I'm not going to do it in a massive way, but maybe just tidying up some of this formatting, maybe using, I'm using camel case here on classes. I don't really want to do that anymore. Just a personal decision. But yeah, I'm using some breaks here to put stuff down to the next line, so I might use a bit of flexbox to balance stuff out a little bit. And then I've got my jQuery being loaded in here, and my site.js being loaded. So that's where my JavaScript's happening. So I think this is when I built this. This was just a very, I think I must have built this with Sublime Text and just with the HTML add-in. So it just gave me a boilerplate HTML. So I'm also missing a favicon and stuff. Not a great concern to me. And then I'm using Bootstrap 3.3. So that's all my Bootstrap stuff, and that's my site CSS. So, and then I'm doing it all in Bootstrap to make it nice and mobile responsive, which is good, I guess, at the time that I built this. So next I'll go over and just, obviously I've got nothing here in the README. The CSS, so probably nothing to write home about here. And then the JavaScript, what do? We have a click event listener, okay, that's listening for the button click. So yes, div button, ID button, and calc tip. Yep. So that button calc tip is listening for a click function, and then it's pulling out the value of the bill, so like the input field. It's passing it, and then it is calling CalculateTip. So that's good. That was good that I was, even though I've got a number, like an input box that's a number, I'm still passing it into a number anyway, or passing it into an integer, I should say. And then I'm outputting the span, just the result from here in the span. Got quite a lot of duplicated code here, which is, this is I guess this is what you do when you're a beginner. You don't really know how to write methods that can not do that type of stuff. So I think what I will do in that case is I'll keep this broken into 3 sections. I'll keep the CalculateTip function here called out on the click. So everything will happen with the click. CalculateTip will be one method, and then I will write another method that does the sums for me, so I don't have to replicate this out. I can just pass it in dynamically, and then I'll just return one string. And I'm doing all this pass in number, all this stuff all here in line when I don't have to do that. And I've also passed the number up there, so I know it's an integer, so I don't need to do it again. Okay, so let's do the JavaScript first. First things first, let's format the file so it looks a bit nicer. And let's just start by defining, all our variables. Then we'll start rewriting code. So all these guys, I also can pull out of there and stick up here. That final bill, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take that and I will pull that out up there, and then I'll just need to do this. So I'm just doing it there. Final bill pass in. I could do that somewhere else. No, okay. So right. Let's also first things first. Let's just change all of these to const, because they're all going to be constants. I'm not going to change anything because I'm doing it all by ID, so I will change these to query selectors, and I will go in and I will fetch the IDs for all these things. So just basically I'm just defining all my variables at the top at the beginning, so I don't need to do them inside functions, so they're accessible from everywhere in the file basically. And that way I don't need to mess around with doing stuff inside of methods. Let's just quickly make that into newer syntax so it just looks nicer. Alright, add event listener, button count. Oh, let's check this still works. 30, amazing. Okay, cool. So that didn't work anymore. HTML button element, site.js line 9. So line 9 is in here. Pass in final bill. Right, let's not do that. Let's do that in, actually, let's do that in there. Let's just do it all in there. So I'm basically just going to be passing the number as I'm passing it into the method. Amazing. That still didn't work. Passing is not defined at line 8. Because I spelt it wrong. Okay, cool. That still works. So I'm calling the CalculateTip. Where am I using that? I'm using it in there, so I can make that a let. I can make that a const. Yeah, cool. Span tip. I can get that out of there. Get that out of there. Document query selector. Let's do that. So I've already refactored that ClickListener to be a lot more just robust. I've taken away a lot of functionality from that method because I don't need to get all these documents. I don't need to look at the DOM, and I don't need to do all that work inside of the ClickListener. The ClickListener should just literally be listening for a click and calling it a function. That's all it should do. It doesn't need to deal with looking at the DOM and pulling out DOM elements and that sort of stuff. Like, why do I need to do that on a click when I can just do that when the JavaScript file loads? The JavaScript can load, it can then look at the DOM and pull all that stuff out so it's ready to go, essentially. So I'm calling tip calculate, where I'm putting the result of calculate tip into this variable that I'm then putting in the inner HTML, the span. I'll look at that in a second, but at the moment it's working. So let's just go and refactor this CalculateTip method now. So I'm using an if statement. So if OK, which is this radio button, if OK is checked, so I'm checking that method, OK, return, and I'm just returning this sort of weird string. And then I'm checking if great. So basically, because of the way I've built it, okay comes first, then great comes, and then amazing. So my if statement here is all right in that sense, that if that isn't checked, then it's always going to be that one, or it's going to be that one. So I could use a switch case here. I could just leave it if else and just export this building functionality out to a secondary function. CalculateTip. Yeah, so let's do that. I think that's what we're going to do. Function, calculate, calculate tip amount. Aha. And that's going to accept again a number. I'll call it, let's call it a number. If I was using TypeScript, I would type that. And that's all that's going to do. That's going to basically do this. It's just going to return. Okay, so what are we doing? We are working out what is 0.15%. Ah, that's another thing I didn't mention. So I've set I've kind of not given the user an option here. I'm kind of just telling them. If it's okay service, then it will be a 12% tip. If it's good service, it's a 15% tip. And if it's amazing service, it's a 17% tip. I think I'll leave it like that. I don't want to, just not overcomplicate the user if they want to give 21% stuff. I'll keep it standard here in what the levels of tip are. So I don't need to pass any of that. What I'll do is calculate tip will just return. No. Firstly, I need to work out my tip amount. And then I also need to work out my total bill. So basically what I'm going to do here is just take all these calculations here and do that with them. Oh, maybe it does need to be dynamic. I need to pass in a number and I need to pass in a service level, which is going to be this number here, service level. And then total bill is going to be, that's complaining because I haven't got an extra line. What was it? What's that complaining about? Oh, because I haven't written anything here. And then that is going to be my number plus my plus tip amount. And then from that I will return a dynamic string saying bill is bill is going to be the number. The tip is going to be the tip amount, and the total bill is going to be total bill. And then all I need to do is not get rid of yet, let's just do that there. Calculate tip amount, and I'm sending it through num and 0.17. And then I can get rid of all of that. Let's do that. And I can get rid of all of that. I'm going to need to return that. And that's going to be passing through 0.15. Return. And then finally get rid of all of that. And get that there. And that's going to send it through num and 0.12. Already a little bit more succinct. Let's see if it actually works. Okay, cool. Oh, so we're not finding the favicon anymore. But say my bill was 90 and I had great service. My bill was 90, my tip was 13, and my total bill is 103. And that looks a lot neater, I think, as well. So yeah, I've basically broken, instead of repeating all these lines of code, and again I probably could go back and do this with the switch case now, but I'm not going to. But it's just, it looks nicer. I don't if I want to change what this return string looks like, if I want to change this, I don't need to now go and change that in 3 different places. I've got one line where it just does it all for me. And if I want to take like total bills, do that, I don't need to do that all now in 3 different places. Or if you sort of extrapolated this out to a bigger app, I wouldn't need to go and do this now in 15 different places. I've got one place where I need to go and make this change now. So that is all the JavaScript I'm going to change, to be honest. And that is now nice and looking good. Let's have a look at the HTML. This is the part I'm being very genuine with you that I do not enjoy that much, because I'm quite bad at it. I'm like bad at HTML, I'm quite bad at design. But let's see what I can do here. I don't like all these spaces. It's not, I don't like seeing it anymore. I also read somewhere once that all these extra spaces, it's just another thing for the DOM to render. It's just another thing for a browser to render. On here in a very small project, you're not going to have, it's not gonna be a massive performance impact. But again, if you're working on a bigger project, something with a wider scale, and you have all these extra spaces, all that stuff will just add up over time, and it will just slow everything up a bit. So that already looks a bit nicer. But I'm using a lot of IDs here. I'm also using Bootstrap. Okay. Right, what will we do? What do we need to do to this? Because I don't want to destroy it totally, but I also don't want to waste my time with it. So let's just have a look at the HTML and the CSS side by side. Tip container background. So I'm doing a gradient basically on the background. Let's kind of look at web components library. Let's just say if we can go and get any inspiration for web component library, just something to inspire our design. We could try and copy material design. That could work. Yeah, let's try and just copy something from material design. So let's have a look at all their components. Let's see what they do. I'm probably going to want something like a card, if I had to guess. No, let's go back this the other way around. Material design. And let's have a look at. So we start going down. There it is. Components. At bar top. Cards. Here we go. So that's kind of nice. We can just kind of copy that style actually. It's very subtle. I like that. Supports media, supports text, supports buttons. Web. Ooh. Let's have a look at the web documentation. It's very good. This is now like, I'm now at a point in like thinking just as I'm going here, oh, maybe if I try and import material design and I can now use this component, but I don't really want to have to go down. The first thing you need to do is install npm. I don't want to have to install npm on a very basic just HTML and JavaScript project, so I'm not going to do that. Again, I don't want to have to do all this, but I do want to do is find the, actually no, I don't really need to find the GitHub. I just need to do this. I can just inspect it here and just see what the CSS on the card is here. Right. So image. Oh, that's just a screenshot of the card. Okay. That's not cool. interactive demo. I think it's probably being loaded up in an iframe, but we still have the actual element there. So that's the card, padding bottom, padding top, box sizing. Alright, let's just try and copy this. So it's got a little bit of a drop shadow just on the bottom, some rounded edges, it's a white background with black text and then grey text for the secondary. So if I look at this, I've already got the rounded edges. Let's give it a little bit of drop shadow. We'll take off the background gradient color. We'll change all the text to black and grey. I'll probably want to do those with flexbox instead of just doing line breaks. And then they'll all line up as well, like the buttons will be in line. And then CalculateTip, I'll just fancy that button up a bit. And then maybe I'll break that down so it's below each other, not side by side. So it just looks a little bit more like a list, essentially. So let's see if I can do that right now. So first things first, my tip container is here. Background, get rid of all this stuff. I don't need it anymore. So tip container is going to be my wrapper, which is this guy. So let's do a little bit of playing around. So tip container. So I want the color. So let's get rid of the color white, text align center, border radius 15 pixels. Let's bring that down to 8. That looks nice. Border, what's that doing? Oh, okay, that's pushing. Okay, so it's giving it all a little bit more of a border for some reason. Okay, so tip container. Let's get rid of that. Wait, what's that going to do to us? Ah, fantastic. Tip container color white. We don't want that anymore. Text align center. We don't want that anymore. We're going to make that. Let's make that 8 pixels. Okay, cool. And let's also make this display flex direction. I never remember this off by heart, whether it's row or column. And then align items center. Maybe also justify content center. Cool. Okay, so that's now centered everything up. And these two, right, so that's that. And then H1, so I'm using view width for the font size. I guess that's tip calculator. So rem is, so I don't know what 15.9 view width is, so I want to make that, let's call that 24 pixels. So that's 1.5 rem. 1.5 rem. Margin bottom. I should probably use some padding on that, but let's see what that does. That's now too small, so let's make that let's make that 3.5 rem. And then let's do it on here actually. Padding bottom 0.5 rem. Yeah, just push that down a little bit. Padding bottom 0.5 rem. Should probably change that to rem as well. So 1 divided by 16 is 0.25 rem. It's a funny word, rem. And then 8 at 0.5. 0.5 rem. My maths fantastic. Text align center div input label input font. So what's div input? Label is final bill and then number. So let's call number 1. I don't like any of this, so let's go div input. Let's also make this display flex. Let's save some time. Let's copy that from up there. Let's see what that does. Cool. So that now drops that down. And let's make the final bill. So let's give that a class. Final bill text. And let's now start making that. So if I was doing this with SAS, I can do it a bit nicer. Color gray. So I think all my secondary text on the page is going to be grey now. Is that, how much was that total? Oh, so I didn't save that as well. So that's now going to be grey. Enter a number. Actually, I can make anything inside of that colour grey, actually. So I don't need to give that a class. So anything inside of there will be grey. Enter a number, and let's give that input type number ID final bill. ID final bill. Let's give that a border of 0.0625 rem. Solid. Let's also give that a border of grey. Save that. Reload. Okay, cool. So we now can see the input box. Can we border radius that as well? That would be nice. Border radius. Let's see if this works. We can't border radius the input. I'm sure we can, but I don't want to go and look for that now. I'm trying to just do a nice fast refactor. Right. Oh, I also wanted to put a final bill color gray. What's final bill? See this. So this is a lesson in ID final bill. This is a lesson in giving stuff very clear names. Like, use a very clear naming strategy for your divs, like for all your HTML, because I'm now looking at this and going tip container. I don't know immediately what that, like, what is tip container? Is it this? Like, what is it? Like, it's not very clear from my naming strategy what stuff is, which is kind of annoying. Box shadow. I don't know how this works. 0001 pixel. So that's all the way around. Let's call it gray. So wait. Okay, so I don't do that. Now I can just use Chrome to do it for me. So I want to offset it by 2 pixels on the bottom. 0 pixels on that there. Blur. Let's give it a little bit of blur. And then spread is 1 pixel. Okay, cool. So we just take that into our tip container. Let's do it underneath that. Oh, silly me. Save that. This is the longest part of refactoring. Doing the JavaScript was easy, but now doing the CSS, this is really like line by line and just redoing it all. So let's start running through this a little bit quicker. So I've done all that. I just need to make all that, and then CalculateTip undefined 43. Oh, so undefined crashes it. That's interesting. Okay, so that's now coming out as black as well. Do I fix the bug? I don't know. How did that work? Just hit CalculateTip undefined, and then undefined, and I add a number. Oh, okay, so it does wipe it, but undefined. See, now I know this. If undefined. No, you know what? I'm going to leave that for now. Don't get sidetracked. You're doing one thing, do one thing at a time. Back here. So now pick a level of service. So div radio buttons. Where are you? So you need to also be font color. If I was using SCSS, I would just set a variable. So you're also gray. You're also going to be in flex. Let's get rid of your margin and your text align and see what happens. Aha, perfect. But that isn't good. That wasn't good. That's not what I wanted to happen. So yeah, let's not do this for now. But I can get rid of all these stupid margins and everything. The label, font size. Let's call that 2.5 rem. instead of view width, because I think I just discovered view width at that point. Oh, there we go. That's also a lot clearer. I mean, it looks horrible. I'm also discovering I'm doing all the QA as well here as now at the same time. As well here as now. So that's fine. Div button. Margin top 10 pixels. Change that to padding, I guess, and see what happens. Exactly the same. It's probably better. Div answer span. Let's give that padding top as well. And div span font size 3.9. That's such a specific number. Let's just call it 2.5 rem and see what that looks like. Enter a number 45. It was great, fantastic. So there we go. A lot of extra and I'm using a media query. So I guess I'm using the media query to do it on mobile, and then see, that's the thing. The media query on mobile is making it nice and small. So this is obviously optimized, let's say, for mobile. I could go in here and do media queries for all this other stuff. But that's body. It's only setting the font size. Okay. So, I mean, I kind of like the look of this now. I mean, oh no, that button color still looks rubbish. Why is that button? Because I probably colored it in, yeah, I've colored it with Bootstrap. Calc button. See, old habits die hard. Old habits die hard. Calc button. Let's just whack that in there quickly. Background color is grey, and color is white. And that had absolutely zero effect because I didn't save the HTML again. There we go. That's a little bit more in line with the styling of it. Obviously, I've done no use cases for not putting in a number. I haven't disabled the button if there isn't an input. I haven't checked if there's no input, or if you haven't. I haven't done any QA on this basically. But what I did do was look at what I've done, understand what I could now do better with my new knowledge. I've refactored up here the CSS. I've refactored massively the JavaScript. I mean, if we just look at the comparison, here on the JavaScript, just for 1 second, see what I actually did. I mean, here, this stuff, all this repeated code, it's all in line, and it's binding stuff together in strings, whereas you can just use string interpolation now. Just redefining all the variables at the beginning using query selectors to find them instead of finding elements by ID or find element by class. I think it just goes to show, I mean, how my skills as a developer really have advanced in the last couple of years. So I will go ahead and push these changes and go back to the other camera. So I couldn't actually let it go. I couldn't sort of finish off all the code work that I was doing without fixing those things that I mentioned. So I did them all without filming, so I'll just go back and show them to you. Obviously I've got it here. So what I changed was, I was just writing some documentation. So basically added also a disabled flag to the button. And I also disabled all the inputs as well. So when the script first runs, we check if, well, number one, we have a check for if the input field for the price here is if there's anything there. And once we start putting in a number, we then enable the button and enable the choices. So it's visually, so as the user, you need to pick one of these now. Another thing that I did was I got rid of that error with the jQuery, and that I realized I had to move the jQuery above the Bootstrap code, so loaded, so I don't have any errors in the console. Just tidied up a bit more of the styling with these buttons. So what I did was I went in and I also just made that sort of container, let's say flex, and I then put these buttons inside divs as well, just so I could more easily manage their layout. I think that's all the extra stuff that I did when I turned the camera off the first time, just to get this ready to push. So this is all now, like, I've pushed all this up to GitHub, so if you want to go and check it out, the link will be down below. And again, back to the other camera. Oh, so that was a tough one. Again, I think when I was looking at the before code, I was, I'm very proud of myself. I was proud of myself that I'd built that. I think, as I mentioned in a lot of that, going through the code, that there was lots of stuff that I did back then that I very obviously wouldn't do now. But it was kind of cool to see where I was at a few years ago. But then also that affirmation of, oh, this was actually super easy to refactor it now because I kind of know what I'm doing. It's those little wins that you kind of always feel that are chasing you when you're learning or when you're becoming or you're growing in a career. Like, oh, this stuff's really easy for me to do now. But it was weird for me to look at a file, see a lot of spacing, seeing very like old school JavaScript, let's say, not seeing TypeScript. Like I work at work, or even in my own projects, I'm using TypeScript most of the time now. To suddenly be working in pure JavaScript again was kind of weird. And just to see a very like old, like not old school, but just a very, I think, beginner's way of doing it. I think I'd used a lot of tutorials to see how to do things, but it wasn't very clear. There was a lot of code repetition. There was a lot of badly optimized code in there. So I think that was nice to go back and sort of see how I was, but how I am now. And I also thought I'd be brave. So if you want to leave me a comment down below with a project that you've written or built or something that you'd want me to go back and have a look at, maybe fork it and see if I can refactor it, then please go ahead and leave me a comment down below, because I think that would be quite good fun. And of course, if you are new to this channel and you enjoy this video, you should see my head over here that you can click on it and you can subscribe. And then up here, there should be a video that YouTube is recommending that you're going to enjoy watching. And until next time, if you enjoyed this video, leave me a comment and see you around next time.